everyone, and welcome once again to the vast and ominous comic book vault. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Dan.
Dan, it's time once again for new acquisitions. Did you get a lot of books this week, Dan?
I had like 10. I thought it was going to be a small week, and I went to the store, it's like, oh my god.
I know, so did I. So Dan and I have a lot to do, and we're going to go ahead and get right into it with some DC. Let's start right off, Dan, with Batman 66.
Yes.
This is the brand new book that I have been waiting for forever, Dan. I'm so excited about this, and I actually just did a review of the first two digital issues of this with Steve, with Death God Storm, and had no idea this was coming out this week. I probably should have checked that. I probably should have checked the solicitation, and I didn't. I didn't realize this was out already, and that we were going to get the rest of it this quickly, which is really exciting. One of the things that I said, Dan, when he and I reviewed this was or reviewed the first part of this. Obviously, there's more to talk about now because it's done, because this first issue is done. But I was really loving this in digital and thought that I couldn't imagine it in panels. Now that I've seen it in panels, it's like I thought it's not as cool in panels. So that sucks, but I had to own it, you know?
Yeah, if nothing for the beautiful Mike Allred cover. He was the perfect guy to put covers on this because he's the pop art guy, and, you know, we're doing a book that's set in the 60s where pop art was, like, the biggest thing ever. So I love this cover, and I love the art in this book all around. It's, the coloring especially fits that 60s aesthetic that it's going for very, very well.
Yeah, and it's just so... It's pop art, but it's also like poppy. It's really in your face and crazy, and just what I wanted from this book. One of the things that I complained about the other day was that this is not talky enough. And now that the actual full-blown issue is over, I feel like it gets a little more talky as it goes along. After the Death Trap. There's a little bit more for the characters to say, and I also think that this more action-driven style is working for the comic medium in a way that it wouldn't have for the TV show, even if the TV show had the kind of budget to do that. I mean, like, you know, the movie had a much larger budget and had, you know, a bunch of vehicles and things, and even still it was super dialogue-driven. Here, we've got, you know, the Batmobile, like, jumping over things, and we've got these much bigger, more, larger scale fights and things, and because there's a little bit more involved plotting for this, it doesn't go too far. It's still this really campy kind of style, but because there's a little bit more involved plotting, I feel like all of that action is working okay. We'll see how it goes after this if I continue to think that it needs more talking, but
yeah, I'm with you. I mean, this did have more action than the TV show. That's one thing I did notice, and one of the things I did notice about the action too was that, I don't know, maybe this is just because I'm watching the shift through a modern eye. And I always try to have historical perspective when I watch things from the past. Sure. But you can't help but laugh at Adam West and Burt Ward when they're fighting people in that show sometimes because it's just so goofy. The way the punches are thrown, sometimes they're really slow and the villain could obviously move out of the way, but it's like, bam! You know? But in this, it's like you and Steve were saying in your review, it's like almost James Bondy in action, where they're like doing flips and stuff. And I thought Parker balanced it very well, where because that kind of humor within the fights, whether it was intended or not in the show, it wouldn't have worked in a comic book, because you can't show motion in a comic book.
Yeah.
So you got to make the action a little bit more dynamic, and I thought that worked really well. That being said, the humor is still as clever as it was in the dialogue in the show. I laughed in the opening scene when, you know, they're talking about a statuette being given to somebody, very specific, you know, what sort of statue it was. I just thought it was a riot that everyone was referring to a statuette. And there's just little things like that where Batman's like, oh, he's flying under the recommended altitude level for airplanes and stuff. It's more funnier than that in the dialogue. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. But yeah, I was just impressed with how well he captured the spirit of what the show was going for. And knowing that this was a digital first book, I was really impressed with how he used the format, too. Because you and I had sort of criticized the DC digital issue collections before for feeling like not enough story and just small snippets of things, and then the jarring because the art is different. This used that format very well in that you could tell where each issue was separated, but it was like a commercial break in the TV show.
That's a great point. Going. Yeah, and it's not going to matter to a reader that's not reading it in digital. This feels like just a straight up regular issue. You get your $3.99's worth. The only thing is there are a couple places where because of the way it was broken up in the digital comic, it would have the announcer who would be like, "Can Batman and Robin work out the latest problem from the Duke of Dilemmas?" And then you get to and then it's like you go right to the next page. You know what I mean? Right. Like that's a lot cooler when at the end it's find out next week. You know, so that gets lost a little bit in translation, but if you didn't know that, it works just fine. Right. I have a couple little minor complaints about this that I wouldn't bring up regularly, but just for the first issue. Alfred doesn't look like the actor. Everybody else looks like they're actors. Yeah. He doesn't look like the actor. I kind of wish that they had captured that a little bit better. And I'm trying to think. It seemed like there was maybe something else I was going to mention too.
Was it the Dracula thing, maybe?
Oh yeah, there's this. So there's this part. It's minor. There's this part where Batman and Robin are scaling up a building. I mean, they do a lot of those token things that you would expect. There's a lady doing the Batusi in a panel. I don't know if you noticed.
Yeah, I love that.
But yeah, so they're climbing up the building, and then somebody pops out of a window, and I was like, oh cool, who's the guest star going to be? I expected. Like, you know, a 60s actor, I'd have to try to guess who it was. It was Dracula. Why was it Dracula? And then I started overthinking. I was like, was it actually Dracula? Was it an actor pretending to be Dracula? And the only other little minor complaint I had was we get the death trap, and then Batman is explaining to us how he got out of the death trap in past tense. I didn't like that. I wanted to see them get out of it like you usually would in the TV show.
Just strangely framed in that way. Very good point.
I don't know why they did that. But otherwise, I just was... There's nothing else we can say about this, guys. It's just really, really fun. And if you like that show, you'll probably like this book. And if kids never watched that show, kids would really like this book.
I agree. And you had talked a little bit about, with Steve, too, saying that it's a little bit more involved in... how it's setting things up sort of in a continuous way for the rest of the series moving forward. And I wouldn't be surprised if that Dracula guest star thing pays off when he talks about maybe we'll meet again in the scene. And how cool would it be to get the 60s version of Batman versus Dracula? Like that movie?
That would be so...
That would be awesome.
Well, and like the comic book. Remember, Batman versus Dracula, there were precedents for that before even Batman did it. Dan, we need to move on. Let's go ahead and jump over now to Ninja Turtles Micro Series Villains, number 4. This is the Alopex issue. First thing I want to mention is I didn't realize how many of these they were going to do. There's more of these coming.
Yes.
Even after this.
You hear which specific one they announced that was pretty exciting?
Who's that?
Bebop and Rocksteady.
Yes! And they have a panel in this.
They do. They tease them again, just like they did in the Raphael one.
So they're teasing them. We haven't seen, which means we'll probably get to see them actually turn into mutants in their own book. That would be my guess.
Yes, I would think so too.
Oh, I'm excited about that, Dan. Anyway, Alopex. So here we get this really cool framework of Alopex going back to her home when she was a regular snow fox before she got turned into Alopex. And
going back to the family thing again that this micro series has been about with the villains since the first issue. That's been the common thread going through all of them, which I really enjoyed.
That's right, and basically the idea is it's very simple. Shredder takes her back there to have her prove her loyalty, and without giving too much away, it's basically he has to make sure that she's giving up completely on all of the things that she used to care about so that she's perfectly loyal to the Foot Clan. And that is, Dan, I think, a really cool way to give us her backstory without resorting to flashbacks.
I agree. There was some flashback in here, but it felt warranted whenever we were getting it because it was sort of like the way she described the way her memory worked. She couldn't really remember those things until she actually got in that physical place. Experiencing those events in real time with her, it was a flashback, but at the same time it wasn't, because she was getting those scenes in her mind at the same time we were. It was a really interesting way to do it.
I gotta say that, and maybe this is partly because I've read these all, like, month to month, and I haven't, besides the first 12, I haven't sat down and read all of these together. This is the first time I felt like I really had a good handle on this character.
Me too. I was very glad that they did something different with her in that I had initially sort of just assumed just by her behavior and at the beginning of this issue too that she's kind of just Karai but a snow fox. You know, she's just this this character that feels like the Shredder is her father figure, and she's completely loyal to him, and all that sort of thing. They go in a completely different direction with this by the end. I don't want to spoil what it is, but I found that to be really interesting, and it'll be interesting to see where this character moves forward from here. They really did the same thing for Alopex in this issue that they did for Old Hob for me with the last one. I was really impressed with the character work they were doing here. It's sort of hard to talk about what happens in this without spoiling how her motivation and what the mini character arc she goes through in this issue is.
It's a very simple story, and that works really well in its favor. I also really liked that subtle bit where she was talking about kind of how she operates and how she feels about working for the Foot Clan and everything. Oh, by the way, the fact that she takes out all those guys blindfolded at the beginning immediately made me like her better. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool, too.
And she has this part where she keeps imagining hitting some of the Ninja Turtles as she's hitting guys, and I thought that was really cool. But then the part where but then at the bottom of that page, this is very minor, but the bottom of that page, there's this cool part where she does an allegory about a rat. And wouldn't it have been cooler if the flashback there had been her hitting Splinter instead of hitting one of the turtles? I wondered why they didn't go
That's a good point, yeah. Especially since they were making so many other connections to other animals. Like, there's a thing with a bear in here, and that represents one of the characters. And I don't want to spoil who it is and how that plays out, obviously. But, yeah, I would have liked to see Splinter in there, and I really liked the psychology of what they did with his character, because, like, she's written in such a way that's different from, like, Old Hob and some of the other villains where, like, they have these thoughts about family and how they were rejected by people and society and those sorts of things. She doesn't really have that conceptually in her mind because she was, unlike Old Hob, who was an animal but lived with people, she was living in the wild. None of the other mutants in this series existed outside of human society. So it's really interesting to see that aspect of her personality played out here, and that's really the reason why she's such a perfect weapon for Shredder and all those sorts of things.
And also, it's nice to have her and Old Hob in this because they're both new characters for this book that we hadn't had before, new kinds of mutates, even before we're going to be introduced to some old mutates, like with Bebop and Rocksteady. Right. And Alopex is the only, unless there's somebody major I'm not thinking of, the only female mutate we've really had in this.
Yeah, that's true. I mean...
I think it's cool that we're doing that.
Thank God we haven't gotten, like, Venus de Milo or anything like that.
Yeah, but I just mean in this book.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm glad that you're right about that.
So anyway, this was great, and boy, they haven't missed on any of these yet. Like, we've had 4 of them, I've liked all 4, and next time we get a Karai one, which I'm looking forward to, although that would be the one that would be the easiest to make really bland and stereotypical, so I'm really looking forward to seeing what's done with it.
I'm looking forward to it just because what they're doing with Leonardo in the City Fall arc in relation to her character is really interesting, and I feel like they're going to play with that.
It's a cool kind of triangle without being a romantic triangle.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing I wanted to mention before we moved on to the next book was, I don't know if you read the little blurb at the back, but
I did, yeah.
The person that worked on the series where the first issue where she appeared passed away, and that's really unfortunate.
The first person who drew her in the
I just wanted to give my condolences to all the people that worked on the book, because I really like that artist's work. And
his name was Franco Uru, and he was actually supposed to draw this.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, well, that's what they said in this. They said they were going to go to him, but then he passed away, because he passed away back in November, so they probably had already planned on this.
And that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Best wishes to all involved in his family and everything.
Yeah, because what they wrote was they said when it came time to do this Alopex villain micro, it was a no-brainer to reunite the Raphael creative team who first introduced the character to the world, and then Franco wanted to work with this guy again. and then he passed away. So, yeah.
And the impressive thing about this Turtle series is, I mean, in general, with all the micro series, is they've had different creative teams most of the time on each book. And it's gotten to the point where I trust IDW in this line so much that I don't even need to look at the names. They're always good.
That is a great point. I've gotten to that point myself, too. Let's go ahead and move on, shall we? Time now for Superior Carnage number
Thor
1.
First.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thor. I forgot about Thor.
It's okay.
Yeah, oops. Yes, let's do Thor now. Thor number
10.
Thor God of Thunder number 10. Dan, why don't you start us off?
This is the penultimate chapter of the God Bomb, which is the penultimate chapter of this big story that Jason Aaron's been telling since issue 1 with the 3 Thors. And man, was this just as good as everything else. We have, again, Gore sort of devolving into the god position that he had been trying to take away from all the other gods in the universe, and he's sort of becoming the one and only god that exists. And it's really interesting because he doesn't realize it, and I think Jason Aaron, the one of the points he's making with this issue specifically, and maybe as an overarching theme in the story, is God's created people in their image, and that means that they're just people with immense power, and they're just as fallible as we are. And when you give, it's very hard to define what a god is, because if you have the kind of power that Gore has, and when someone disobeys you, like someone does in this issue early on, disobeys just even like a simple thing like saying the wrong thing in a conversation, you strike them down and kill them. That's something a god would do. So it's just really interesting playing with the gray area between god, mortal. What does that mean?
If gods aren't celestial and they're basically flesh and blood, and they can be killed, and they can come down to Earth and fraternize with mortals or kill mortals or whatever it is they want to do, then what is the difference really between Thor and a superpowered character?
Exactly.
Who's not touted up as being a god and wasn't from some, because honestly, within Marvel, the only thing that makes the Asgardians gods is that they have superpowers, and they're immortal, and they're from another plane of existence. They live but it's basically just a different dimension. We have characters from other dimensions that aren't gods. So yeah, I love that he's going here making us question it, because it's really thought-provoking.
It is. I just love everything about this book. Asad Ribick's artwork continues to just blow me away with every panel. Some
really intense, cool images here. We get to see one of the Thors with 2 hammers at the same time.
That was so cool. I mean, he's just turning expectations on its head. Like, I didn't even know Thor could pick up 2 Mjolnirs, and you don't question it, because the way it's used in the story is so authentic, and it's used in such an interesting and cool way that if it was anyone else, and Thor just like picked up 2 hammers out of context and didn't sell it to us the way Aaron does it, you might question a little bit. But Aaron is so good at having things like that are a little goofy, like Thor picking up 2 hammers and fighting. It's kind of a goofy idea, but it's goofy in a good way. This book has always had that heavy metal kind of vibe to it, where it's sort of the heightened way in which they would fight, and they're always drinking mead and all that sort of thing. So
I love that you mentioned heavy metal. It is a lot like that, and Gore here now is more and more a tragic character.
Yes.
Like the way his family is degenerating. I'm caring about those people. I'm caring about his wife and his son, and it's really sad that, without giving away the tragedy that happens in this book and in this issue specifically, and more you're discovering that Gore used to be a good guy, and life dealt him a bad hand, and gods were the cause of it, and he blamed the gods that he worshipped, and that's how he got to the place he's at now. This is one of those classic degenerations of a good person into a supervillain, but one of the best I've ever seen in comic books, I've got to say. This is going to go down as one of my favorite runs, Marvel runs in general. I really, 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 really like it.
I think so. I agree with everything you just said, and I think if Aaron sticks the landing on this, which I have no reason to believe he's not, because it's been getting better with every issue, this is going to go down with Simonson and the Lee Kirby stuff and the JMS stuff as one of the best Thor things that's ever been done, I think. I I've just been blown away by every issue constantly, every time. Like, there hasn't been one that has been weaker than the previous issue. And I can't say that about any other book I've been reading since comics, really. There's always, like, one issue in a run where you're like, oh, that wasn't as good as some of the issues I had liked, but, you know, it's still pretty good.
Yeah.
But,
there's
man,
something...
This is just astounding quality.
There's something really special there, and it continues to be timeless, like I've said before. That it doesn't feel like it's from. I think there are a couple phrases he uses here that kind of dated a little bit, but for the most part, especially art wise, it doesn't look like. I really like Rivic's art in this. I mean, it could have come out in the late '80s or the early '90s. You know, there's nothing. There's nothing specifically 2013 about it. Enough said. Let's move on to Superior Carnage #1.
Yes.
This is a book that I'm not going to have nearly as much to say about as I did Thor here. This was written by Kevin Shinnick and art by Steven Segovia. This was just okay to me, Dan. How did you feel about this?
I liked the direction it's heading in. I don't know if I'm necessarily in love with it yet. I'm with you. I think the idea is a good one. I think we're giving Carnage something else to do other than just do Maximum Carnage over and over again.
Yeah.
We're basically, for those who don't know, I'm going to sort of summarize the plot a little bit. Try not to spoil too much, but basically the premise is someone is trying to do what the government did to Venom and turn him into a super soldier, but with Carnage, and make him a super criminal instead.
Yeah.
Use him as a weapon they can point, and for those sorts of things. I think that's an interesting idea, and it does get a little bit political at the beginning, where it's talking about the prison laws and how prisons are overcrowded and how prisoners are treated, and I like all that stuff, and if it continues to touch on some of those ideas, I'd be interested in continuing to read the series, and I'm going to anyway.
What I liked about that is that it's not too overly like real life political, because it's dealing with comic book politics, and I always enjoy that. What that part is doing is saying, look, we've got this giant maximum security prison for supervillains, but they always get out, so there's always vacancies. So we have this overcrowding problem in regular prisons, but when we run out of room, we'll just put some regular criminals that aren't that violent in these places because we've got cells for them. And then there's kind of a moral problem built up there, because if you put one of those guys next to Carnage and he gets out, he's going to kill them. I thought that was fun, and it honestly could have been too preachy about the overcrowdingness of real prisons, and it didn't go there. It wasn't preaching at me so much as talking about kind of amusing not coincidental, but kind of circumstantial comic book politics that you don't usually think about. But yeah, if you're going to keep using a character like Carnage, he has to keep breaking out of a maximum security prison, and there are more people than Carnage that do that, ergo, they have vacancies. That's hilarious.
Right, and I like, too, that you said it wasn't too preaching. I think the fact that they were playing some comedic beats while they were talking about those things helped a lot in not making it seem like that. Whether you enjoyed the jokes or not, because they were sort of, poop jokes.
That's true, and I didn't like that. I liked the idea. The idea was fun. You're right. It wasn't just poop jokes. It was the same one over and over again, and I got really sick of that. I hope I'm not going too far when I say this, but not every person craps in their pants when they get nervous. I'm just saying. That was really stupid. It was just that, anyway, I don't want to talk about that anymore. But ultimately, this isn't real dense, Dan. It's pretty much a supervillain. Should we talk about who it is?
If you like.
Does it matter if we give that away?
I don't think it's a big
I honestly don't think it matters.
So.
Basically, it's the Frightful Four. It's the Frightful Four coming back and trying to take over Carnage. And one of them, who is it? The Wizard uses some technology to do that, and but that's about it. He tries to take over Carnage, and some things don't go the way he plans, but that's about all that happens in it.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, I think this is one of the first books in this Superior thing they're doing with the Spider-Man books where the title is actually warranted.
It is warranted. I was impressed with that.
I was impressed with that too. So, yeah, I'm intrigued, curiously intrigued, not in love, but I'd recommend it if you're a fan of Carnage. You know, if anything, it's worth reading for that. It's not a terrible book. And better than the last mini, I think. How that started, Carnage USA. I enjoyed this more than the first issue of the last series.
Yeah, but that's not saying much because we really didn't like that.
That's true. Yeah.
It's not better than Minimum Carnage.
No, I enjoyed Minimum Carnage quite a bit. So,
but I do also think we should mention that it's good at least that you get the impression right away from the end of this that Cletus Cassidy is not completely gone, that maybe there's something going on with Carnage, so that Carnage isn't just a prop in this, because that would be kind of pointless. I kind of want there to be, at least, even if he's not, I want there to be a hint of maybe there's still some of that Cletus Cassidy personality left in there.
Oh yeah, I had a feeling that's what they're going for too, especially that scene where the prisoner that we get the perspective from in the beginning of the issue, he was talking about he can still see the evil behind his eyes and he looks at him and things like that. So yeah, they did a very good job of making Cletus Cassidy by himself scary before the Carnage costume came out and started killing. Because Cletus Cassidy is just as scary as Carnage, I think, anyway.
Oh no, he is, yeah. And also the idea that the Wizard brings up, I just thought of this. The line he has where he's like, it makes a lot more sense to instead of trying to make evil good, try to take evil and use it for greater evil. And he's talking about Venom there, where we took, like you said earlier, where we took the Venom Carnage or costume and we made it into a superhero, and this this is going to be more effective because we don't have to keep writing him in. We get to let him loose and use him for our own business. So
right. Yeah, that is a very good point.
Could be great.
One thing that I really liked about it too. So a lukewarm recommendation, I would say, from me, and I think from you too.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and move on now to Ultimate Comics All New Spider-Man number 25, and I want to, before we even get into the book, mention this cover, because what a cool image. We've got on this cover Miles Morales pulling off his own face to finally reveal Spider-Man, which is really indicative of everything this issue is about. I love it when superhero comics deal with identity. That's one of the best things that superhero comics can do. And we've got 3 different people for the last couple issues that have been trying really hard to force Miles Morales to put the costume back on, without even realizing, I think, that they're like forcing him into a destiny and not letting him be his own man, saying it's his responsibility and he is doing something almost immoral to not put the suit back on. And those people are Gwen Stacy and Spider-Woman, and there's one more person that's trying to force that, and I'm trying to, I'm not
his
remembering
best
what
friend.
it is. Yeah, Gang is doing it.
Yes.
Yeah, and those 3 people trying to force him back into the suit, and they end up kind of more of them, some of them more than others, having a really good point by the end of this issue for why he has to do that. And Dan, I think you would agree with me if I were to say that is classic Peter Parker Spider-Man stuff.
It's classic Spider-Man all around this issue. Bendis did such a good job, and this, I just want to mention before I get into what I want to say about this.
Sure.
The origin's finally finished.
Yeah.
This seems to be the ending of Miles Morales' origin, and we're going to get a status quo for him, and it's going to, we're just going to tell Spider-Man stories with him now. But I loved this issue. I thought it was fantastic. It was Bendis turned that classic Spider-Man thing on its head of the Destiny thing that you were talking about, and it's sort of he's being forced into this destiny like Peter Parker was, but it's not necessarily a choice for him. Peter Parker was a choice. He could have taken a different path, whereas Miles Morales is forced into this, and the same 2 of the same people, actually 3 of the same people that made Peter Parker who he was are the people making Miles Morales who he was. We have Spider-Woman, who is Peter Parker. Peter Parker, Gwen Stacy, and Aunt May, too. Aunt May has something to say about this in here, too.
Sure.
And
I just didn't bring her up because she's the only one that doesn't talk to him directly.
Exactly. I just think it's so interesting that we have this kid who's not all that related to all these people, but Bendis found a way to make all of these people so essential to making this guy who he is, which is, very, Peter Parker. It was the same sort of thing with him. I really enjoyed all of that stuff. The dialogue in here was fantastic, as usual with Bendis stuff. The scene, especially with Spider-Woman, where she's talking about how she's just a clone of Peter Parker and she's just this thing and she doesn't really know how to perceive herself.
Yeah.
Very interesting stuff.
And something I'd never thought about with her, because I haven't read a lot of Ultimate, and I knew that she was kind of a clone, but I hadn't really thought as far as Bendis takes this. She not only has identity issues because she's a clone of Peter Parker, and importantly has some of his memories, but also gender identity issues. Because she's a woman. She has this line where she says, "I'm not even a boy." And she has to reconcile all those. So, I mean, imagine having the memories of being a girl. Imagine, if you can, Dan, being a teenage girl, a little older than teenager. Maybe she's what is she? 21, 22. Let's say she is like just post high school age, physically. And let's say that she's got the memories of a prepubescent boy going into adolescence. What would you be like?
I don't know.
That is fascinating.
Yeah, it's really fascinating stuff, playing with all the psychology of this stuff, and it's really interesting too, because we have Peter Parker. One of the things that was always played up in the early stories with him was he was always doing these sort of things to help Aunt May out to pay the bills and all that sort of thing. Family was a big priority in Peter Parker's life, and we have Miles Morales having to sort of put his family by the wayside to do this great. To carry this great burden that everybody wants him to carry.
And it's also different for him because it's a legacy. Because for Peter Parker, he had to make a choice, and like you said earlier, but for Miles Morales, it would be a choice for him if he got bit by a spider and there wasn't a Spider-Man before. So part of what is changing his future and his destiny, if you will, is the existence of Peter Parker. So his presence is still felt 100% in this. I think it's really cool that we've got Spider-Woman to also ground that a little bit, because again, she is partly Peter Parker. And I also want to mention that you've got this really cool character parallel, because before it was Peter Parker kind of alone, going by himself. And here, Bendis is making a big thing out of relationships and duos, because we've got Cloak and Dagger, and they both became superheroes together. They both became the superpowered, not superheroes yet, but both these superpowered characters, both at the same time, and they have to kind of help each other. And and Bendis is paralleling that with Miles and Spider-Woman here.
Yes.
Both of them, and it's also a similar relationship in that they're not romantic, but it's male and female, and I mean they're kind of he's really building up. I want to see where that's going to go, because I get the sense that Cloak and Dagger are going to be there for a while.
Yeah, and I one of the things you mentioned too about romanticism. On that little scene that we had with Miles' girlfriend here, because I loved that scene too. It's beautifully written, where it's done in a very realistic way, but it's sort of the classic teenage relationship thing where the two people clearly like each other and they're involved with each other. Obviously, we know these two people are growing up, but the thing that's holding back the relationship is a lack of communication, because Miles, as a male, is socialized to not want to show any weakness, and obviously women are socialized in such a way where they can be a little bit more open with their emotions, and society's more accepting of women talking about their emotions and their problems outwardly with people, whereas males, that's not as widely accepted. And it's written here in such a way that exemplifies that in a natural dialogue kind of way. I love that about it too. Bendis is just, he knows his Spider-Man, and he's working on all cylinders here. This is a Spider-Man fan, made me really happy, and I really like this character. Miles Morales is fantastic.
I didn't think it would ever get this good after spending so much time in Origin, and we said this before, but a few issues ago, I was getting a little dulled by this book and calling it kind of the weakest of the Bendis books. boy, this is in a great place right now. And if you haven't been reading this lately, do yourself a favor and try out 23 forward and see what you think of it, because the rest of it you can live without and get caught up pretty well to speed. If nothing else, pick up issue 26. I haven't even read it yet, but I'm just saying, that being the new status quo, if nothing else, I would imagine the next issue might be a decent jumping on point. I haven't read it yet, it's not out, but I'm just saying.
And hopefully Marvel collects the first 25 issues in an omnibus or something, so for people later on, if they want to read, the Miles origin. I know the first trade will probably be labeled as the origin of the new Spider-Man, but this is where you get into a place as a character where he can be Spider-Man.
Wouldn't it be cool if they put that out in hardcover?
Oh, that'd be fantastic. I would love that.
Dan, let's move on to All New X-Men, number 14.
Yeah.
This whole... The beginning of this issue was all based on a giant misunderstanding, which is really funny. Jean Grey... I'll go ahead and give this away. Jean Grey, because I don't know how else to talk about this, makes all the bad guys... Because finally we've got, by the way... the villains all fighting the X-Men, because it's funny, it's issue 14 and finally I can say, look, the bad guys are fighting the good guys. But anyway, so she makes Sabretooth and Mystique and everybody think that she's turning into Phoenix, and that was kind of the big WTF at the end of the last issue. It's like, what, the Phoenix? But of course we knew the Phoenix wasn't back, right? And she actually is just making everybody think that, but she doesn't have a good handle on her powers, so all the other X-Men see it too, and it freaks everybody out. It's a really big deal. And then, and I won't give this away, but then there are a couple of other fake out things that happen that are pretty fun too. What do you think, man?
I just didn't know what to think as I was turning the page in this book. It's such a page turner because you have all these like reveals where you're like, oh my god, is that really happening? And then he'll hit you with, no, that's not really what's happening. And then there's another one. It just keeps you going through the book. Bendis is in this book specifically, is a master of the page turn. He gets you on the edge of your seat almost with every panel in this book. This is sort of a fight issue.
Yeah.
There's some dialogue when they're fighting, so there's not a lot to be said about like deep characterization or anything other than like Jean Grey still learning to use her powers and things like that. There's another nice moment between Alex and Scott Summers that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, but I'm not going to begrudge at that because we don't get enough of that in these issues, and that's the big thing that people tend to complain about. So it's nice to finally get that, and it's not out of nowhere. This was the time for a fight,
Right. So I don't really have a whole ton to say about it, other than I'm intrigued as to where Jean Grey's, using that illusion on everybody and that shaking everybody up fast, because we have her in a place by the end of the issue where she's sort of down in the dumps again, and it'll be interesting to see how she deals with that as her character. Kitty Pryde had talked to her a little bit before about not doing things like that again, and there would be consequences if she did. So that will be interesting to see, and they're still thinking about whether the X-Men still, the old X-Men still belong here. So it's sort of just reminding you about a lot of the things that are going on in the plot with this big, fun action bit in the middle of it.
Yeah, it's grounded in all the ideas that have permeated this book, but it's not furthering them too far, and that's okay, because like you said, it is somewhat of a fight issue, but we needed to finally have Mystique do something, honestly. And also, I'm glad also that Jean Grey kind of gets front and center again, and that she's got so much to do. Am I an idiot? What is the cover about?
I'm not really sure why he's on there, but I believe that's a member of the Hellfire Club.
That was the assumption I made. It looks like Hellfire Club, but like, why? Yeah. Why? What does that have to do with the issue we just read?
Yeah, I was thinking maybe we're going to get like Hellfire Club.
That's what I thought.
To that Phoenix stuff, because that's all related. But there was nothing to be seen here, so I'm not really sure. I'm with you. That's kind of strange.
All right. Well, I hope I didn't accidentally put the wrong cover on the book. Moving right along, here comes What If A versus X, AVX issue 2. Last we found these different obviously opposite, or not opposite, because then everybody would be having a beard, Dan. We have this different dimension where Avengers vs. X-Men happens a little bit differently, and one of the big inciting incidents happens at the end of the first issue, which we can talk about now, which is that Wolverine accidentally stabs and kills Storm, and that's kind of the big catalyst that begins everything here, and things are happening a little bit differently with the Phoenix out in space than they did in the other one. By the end of this, things are in really a different place, and I gotta say, Dan, this is, by the end of halfway through this, kind of where I was hoping it would go. That is the fun thing to explore without giving it away. I'll say this cryptically. There's a big thing that everybody thinks is going to happen at the beginning of AVX that never actually ends up happening, and by halfway through this, it happens. And we're going to get to see through the rest of this how that all plays out. I also want to mention that I think Palmiotti's dialogue here is actually better than the first issue, and he's really stepped it up a little bit. So I guess he had to kind of feel his way a little bit in that first issue, but I enjoyed this quite a bit more than the first part.
Yeah, I did enjoy this. I'm with you. The dialogue did get better. I think we had talked a little bit about the first issue being a little bit set-up-y, and I think now that he's gotten past all that, he can take some time to really write some organic dialogue with the characters. That's not just... I mean, it wasn't all stilted exposition in the first issue, but it was a lot of that exposition getting you to the place that you wanted to get you in. So I was glad for that. One of the things that I was sort of resistant to, and I suppose this is a what-if thing, so I guess it's fair, but Emma Frost turning so fast. Is this like a what if she really was evil the whole time? And if it's not, she turns on Scott Summers really fast and they're supposed to be in love. That was one of the things that I was thinking about. But if it's a what if thing and she really has been manipulating everybody the whole time, that'll be fine. I'm just waiting to see where it goes, if you know what I mean.
Because the problem is you can't explain all those things away with just, well, it's called What If. Here's the thing about What If as a title. I don't like that they do it like this. I don't like that the title now is just What If and then the thing. Like, What If used to be What If Peter Parker kept 6 arms, or What If Spider-Man got married to Black Cat. These sorts of things should be like, what if the thing that you thought maybe was going to happen that didn't happen actually happened, being cryptic and not actually telling you what I'm talking about. You see what I'm saying? So the problem is, if that is where it goes, it needs to all be interconnected, because there needs to be an inciting incident that, like, everything is the same up to this point, and then it changes, and then it goes off in a different direction. Not, here's these 5 different things we're going to arbitrarily change, and then show it differently. That's not interesting. Who cares? What if is a science fiction statement. It's speculative fiction. It's what if we had transporters in the future? So that's what they need to keep doing with these. So if it's like they changed 5 or 6 things just to make a different AVX, I don't care about that as much. I want one inciting incident that is the one big thing that was different from the first time.
I agree, and I'm hoping that Emma Frost is revealed. I'm hoping that it's revealed to be a little bit more complicated than that. And one of the things that I thought was good about this is a what if series specifically is we have an Avengers vs. X-Men book where we have some casualties, because these characters won't have to be continuing to have adventures in Marvel now, because this is it's an isolated thing. Some of the character deaths hit me in places that I understood where the characters were coming from, like the Falcon dies in here, for example, in Captain America. You get that connection because, they used to be partners. It was like almost like a him and Bucky kind of thing. They were that close. So, you buy that death affecting him. And then there was one with Misty Knight, Colleen, her partner, which I'm just not familiar with the characters, so I didn't... And she kind of gets killed, like, off-panel. You never see her face. So I wasn't really as invested in that death, and it didn't really hit me as hard. And I don't know. I think one of the big weaknesses of this book, if I were to make any criticism, is the artwork. There were some places where I was just not feeling it. There's some panel, the panel where Cap is standing over Falcon's dead body, it looks like Rob Liefeld Cap, man.
Wow, you're going to go that far?
He's just got the, like, I don't know, he's got those big Rob Liefeld breast chest thing going on.
Yeah, and you know what? I guess I wasn't even paying that close of attention to that, because, like, look at his face, too. Like,
yeah, his chin is, like, on his breast. It's very strange looking to me. Not all the panels are like that, but there was just some of them where I was like, man, that just doesn't look right to me. When compared to the other stuff in the book, because it's mostly anatomically correct through the whole thing, but there's just some places where it's a little inconsistent. Other than that, yeah, I agree with you. I enjoyed it.
That's weird, because it didn't seem quite that odd and inconsistent in the first issue.
Yeah, you're right.
Well, anyway, let's go ahead and move on, shall we? Thanos Rising number 4. Dan and I, first issue of this, were kind of like, oh, this wasn't quite what we thought it was going to be. By the second issue, we were completely on board. Now I'm 100% blown away. Boy, am I happy with this. And we had been speculating for a long time, because, let's face it, this ain't speculation, this is obvious, that the girl that Thanos wants to be with is Death. And this completely and utterly establishes that it's Death. I hope I'm not giving too much away, but it completely establishes in a really cool and interesting way that it's Death, and how freaking insane Thanos really is. And what I'm really enjoying about this is this constant nature versus nurture thing, but also more Thanos's like predestination versus was he born evil? Could he actually change that? And what's really interesting is when you find out what the whole deal is with Death finally, I don't know the answer to that.
It's really interesting, and I think the great thing about this series so far is it hasn't forgotten to ground all of the crazy things that happen in this series on cosmic scale, really, where you have Thanos being a space pirate and like wiping out entire world populations and things like that. It grounds it in basic human ideas. This is a story about personal responsibility and an insane person not being able to take personal responsibility for the things he does. Even if Death, because it's left ambiguous, sort of, as to whether or not Death is a manifestation of Thanos' imagination, or if she's a real entity that is directing him and no one else can see her because she's a really powerful being.
And that's what makes it complicated, because we know from our other Marvel things that Death is a real being, because other people do see Death in other Marvel comics.
And I was thinking about that, though. And you think about the other people that can see her. The one I know of that can see her is Deadpool, and he's also crazy.
And also can see beyond the fourth wall.
Yes, so it's an interesting question to ask. And when you think about it, like, even if...
Is the manifestation of Death even a real entity or not? Yeah, that's fascinating. And so it could be that Thanos really just is insane and made her up, and that Deadpool heard of her.
Yeah, and I haven't read everything with Death in the world. Maybe she has appeared in previous places, and there is irrefutable proof that she is a real being. I'm not really sure, but if you're just reading this series for this story specifically, that's the way Aaron plays it, and I think that's the way you're supposed to read it.
I think so too. Yeah.
So I think that's really interesting, and even if she isn't a manifestation of his imagination, he's blaming the terrible things that he does on his connection to her. Everything is, she's telling me to do these things. I'm just following orders. She won't love me unless I do these things. It's her fault, not mine.
Yeah, the grand contradiction with Thanos in this is that all he wants is to make her love him and to be able to feel love, because the only thing he feels love for is her. And he discovers in this that she is the manifestation of Death, and so then that is terrifying. But before he knows that, this is just a person that he is fascinated with, and the only thing in the universe that gives him actual positive feelings of any kind. And everything else is just, I'm killing things trying to feel something, and then ultimately it's I'm killing things to make her like me because she tells me to kill things. And so, I like this character, or not, I don't, he's Thanos, he's evil, but I'm just saying that I'm invested and interested in him. He's a character that I care about. He's not sympathetic, he can't be, But this issue finally really solidifies just how selfish he is, and that that Thanos' biggest vice, biggest sin, really, over everything else, is pure, unadulterated selfishness. He kills because he wants this one thing, and he doesn't care if anybody else, he doesn't care about anybody else. He's going to kill as many people as it takes to get the thing he wants. When you get to the end of this, without giving anything away, the way this ends, it is the greatest, most, not exaggerated, but the greatest example of a person's selfishness I have ever seen in anything.
I agree. It leaves him in a, and I don't want to spoil it, because the way that, when it's revealed what the whole death thing is all about, and Thanos realizes how everyone else has been perceiving him, there's this great description where Death is saying to Thanos, the crew will see you in your bedroom dragging corpses and speaking to them, and they think you're really crazy. And when he realizes all of those things, and now the crew perceives him, and maybe he thinks he's crazy a little bit, the way that he chooses to deal with that, and then isn't able to deal with that in the way that he thinks he is initially, it does outline his selfishness, and also his fascination with this death concept. It underscores it so well, because if he does the thing that he's going to do, it'll make him impossible for him to get any closer to death in any feasible way. So you're right. He doesn't make the selfless choice, which would stop millions of other people from dying. He chooses the thing that will get him pleasure.
And consistently he couldn't. And ergo, I have to ask myself, was he from birth actually incapable of feeling anything but enjoyment over killing people? And it's sad, really, because if he can't help it, then he's just a tragic character that somebody needs to put down, or the whole universe is going to die. I mean, it's really sad. But if he actually had that a moment where he could have gone where he could have taken a different path, which has already been provided for us, and we have to decide whether or not that was a true moment, a true opportunity for change, or if Thanos is from birth incapable of it, then he really is as evil as he's always seemed. And, of course, Jason Aaron's not going to give us that. We're going to have to decide that on our own.
Right, and I think that's a very good point about him being evil from birth and it being very sad. And when you think about it, too, Aaron leaves it ambiguous as to whether or not he's evil from birth, or it's the way he was socialized, too, because we get a scene with his father in here, and he's sort of in denial about the whole thing, and we see Thanos from his early childhood, and Death is the only person that will even talk to him. He's completely isolated from all the other children because of the way he looks. They don't treat him as a human being, really. Is it the way that society treats these people, the way that we deal with mentally ill people? Because their society is very similar to the way we do those sorts of things. Is that the reason for why people turn out like this, or are they just born that way? I think that's such a fascinating idea.
And not just socialization, but also parentage. And we can always we always have to look at that, right? Because you have a mother that wanted to kill him from the very beginning, who believed, oh, he's evil, we have to kill him. And right, wasn't it his mom? Like, right away, I want to kill him. And then you have a father that is in complete denial and says he couldn't possibly have done that. Well, you got those two parents, and you're going to be messed up.
Yeah, his father won't take personal responsibility for the things that his son is doing.
Dan, we've got to move along. We could probably analyze this for another 10 minutes.
Yes, could.
This is, but anyway, God, I'm impressed with Aaron on this. And I know we're kind of just sitting here, like, praising Aaron up and down today, but with what he's doing here and what he's doing in Thor, he is on a roll right now.
He's one of the best writers working in comics, right up there with Bendis, I would think. He deserves the position that he has at Marvel as one of their top-tier writers, to the 10th degree. He's one of my favorite writers working.
Dan, let's go on to our last book together, and this is a book that's been out for a little while, but I keep meaning to do this, and we haven't read it together yet, so now we've done it. And here is Dogs and Sailors by S. Forrester from Primal Paper.
Who wrote and illustrated the book.
Yes, this is one of the Primal Paper books. Of course, if you don't know, Primal Paper is headed up mostly by Justin Cristelli, the real Manos, and he does Red Knight. He does Red Knight, and I'm not just saying this because he's a friend of mine. I like Red Knight quite a bit. And
yes, I do too. It's a good book.
I've been reading some other books from Primal Paper, and we've got some other stuff to talk about down the line. We need to do the ends.
The ends is one that I have all of. That
he's on issue 6 now, and Dan hasn't read any of it, which is why we're not covering it yet. So I just
haven't had time to sit down and take a look at all of the 6 or 7 issues. I forget how many Manos sent me in the package, but yeah, as soon as I get all those read, we'll be doing either a separate video or something on new acquisitions talking about the issues.
We'll figure it out. But yeah, so we'll knock out the ends soon. I would like to start doing this together and doing Red Knight together as Mano starts getting that back out again. So this is Dogs and Sailors. This is a very, very different book from anything else that they're doing over at Primal Paper. It's still set in Norfolk, Virginia, which is a big thing they like to do because they're all from there. And this is a really cool setting for this book because this is this is a period book. It's set in 42, I think, and it's kind of a detective-y crime drama set in the setting of Norfolk, Virginia, during that period when it was a big naval town, and a lot of troops from World War II were coming in and out of there, and this is all what would detective work around there be like in the middle of wartime. There's a really cool mystery here. What do you think of this, Dan?
I thought this was pretty enjoyable. I have to say, all around, I really enjoyed this. I was really impressed with how well researched this seemed when I was reading it, and then it was sort of confirmed with the couple pages we have in the back here where he talks a little bit about the research he did about the town, things that he might have already known. Just giving us a little bit of information about the context for the time period and what Norfolk was like when the story takes place, and that helped me a lot in seeing where some of the characters are coming from, like the what's the name of the female character? Lila. She is a U.S. Navy veteran or someone that's in the U.S. Navy currently. I can't remember if they said she's done with her service or not, or if she's going to be going back. But regardless, that gives some credence to, this is a shipping town. There's a big port, so it makes sense for a Navy woman to be there, and it. All of the things in the background of these characters really gives credence to their personalities, and I love that the male character Seth, he sort of looks up to all the pulp and the comic book heroes, and it's sort of reflected in his idealism, and it's not what's the word I'm looking for? It doesn't beat you over the head with that. It's not like obvious about it that he has this idealism, and it's sort of refreshing in this time period because of how gritty and noirish and dark the world looks at times. And I like that because it's sort of reflective of the dualism of America at the time, where we have war horribly going on overseas, we're fighting, but at home there's this optimism that's going on, and America's becoming one of the biggest superpowers in the world at the time. This is like the turning point for America, and I like that.
I think it's also fun that that's reflected in the artwork. You've got all the pulp stuff going on, but we've got this this is a story about prostitution, and you've got it's dark material, but with a backdrop that is half. Almost Fleischer Superman looking with the character designs, and also half really dark pulp noir, or noir. Like I feel like you've got your dark and your light all at the same time in this book, and I think that is reflected in these two characters. I feel like Lila is kind of a classically cynical character. If I'm reading this right, I feel like she's and especially the way she and Seth don't get along very well, she kind of steps on top of him, and it's interesting because like Seth, it's not that he doesn't have a spine. He's good at what he does, but
he sticks by his ideas to the T.
Yeah, but then at the same time, he's also way more positive.
He's more naive.
He's more naive
over his head,
but he's also more positive than she is, and
yeah,
I feel like you need that for this book because I like him, and she's a little hard to like.
Yeah, she is, but you can sort of see where she's coming from.
Oh no, absolutely, yeah. I just feel like they balance each other well.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that they have this dysfunctional romantic relationship. I think that's very telling of what he's trying to say with this book, where we can't be Seth and we can't be Lila. We need to come to we need to see the problems in our world and be a little bit cynical, see some of the problems in society and try to fix them instead of. I mean, Seth does go out and try to fix some of the problems, but initially he looks at things in a more black and white way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think maybe he has somewhat of a difficult time telling even appreciating the problems for what exactly they are. He's more idealistic.
Exactly.
Was the word I was looking for. I am really impressed with this artwork.
Yeah, it's a juxtaposition that you were talking about, and you wouldn't think it would work when you talk about it, but it reminds me almost of this sort of interesting juxtaposition that Batman the Animated Series had, where it looks like Fleischer's Superman, but it's dark in places, and it's gritty and it's noir, but it looks really clean at the same time. It's really interesting.
Like sometimes these characters' faces are almost too chipper looking for the dark, for like the atmosphere that they're in, because they almost always have frowns on their face, or they're crying or whatever. But then they look like they should be in a Warner Brothers cartoon or something.
Yeah, and they're extremely expressive. I had no trouble ever reading a character's emotion and what they're saying in the dialogue based on their facial expression. Like that happens to me sometimes in Marvel and DC. Mainstream big money behind them comic books, where like the artist will not get with what the writer's trying to convey with a scene, and they'll draw the facial expression wrong. Obviously it helps to be writing and drawing the book yourself, but conveying facial expressions this well I think is not something to be taken lightly. I think it's a great skill to have as an artist.
I also think it's important to note that this, because I always like to talk about this when we talk about independent and more underground books. This is a book that looks like it wants to be in black and white. This is not something that I'm like looking at wanting to see color. A lot of indie books will kind of want to be in color, and they'll do the best they can with black and white, but they just can't afford to be in color. This is not a book that's saying, "Look at me, I don't have the money to be in color." This is a black and white book, and it needs to be. The shading is fantastic. I feel like too much color would hurt it.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's using what it has at its disposal to the best degree that it could, I think. And that's very smart of it. It's very intelligently crafted, I think, quite a bit.
Also
I was actually really, really impressed with this. The more I talk about it, the more I like it.
It was also really intelligently written, Dan. This doesn't. There aren't grammatical errors. There aren't those sorts of silly mistakes, and it feels well edited, well picked over, and just from a narrative perspective, like his word choice is great. He's got voices for these characters. The jargon is spot on. From what little I know of this time, I've seen lots of things from this time period, but I'm just saying that, like, as far as I can tell, the jargon seems right. The vocabulary seems right. There is a real passion here that is infectious.
Yeah, I feel like this could be an Image book.
This good, but just the way it is, yeah. Anyway, this is really, really good. And if you're looking for something really different that's not superhero, something really kind of underground, you want to try more Primal Paper stuff, but you're not sure what's going to be to your liking, what's not. We've just told you kind of what this book is, and this sort of thing is not usually what I like to read in comics, just because I'm such a sci-fi superhero guy. But this is really good, and it wants to be in panels. This isn't something that's going, well, I couldn't do this on TV, or I could, some other way, This is a comic book. So anyway, check that out. It's really, really good.
And if anything, if you're not sure about checking this out, this does have a story in their free comic book day thing. So if you want to check out what the maybe what the artwork looks like, get a feel for the characters and the story, you can download that for free on their website and try it out.
Pages, yeah.
So
Dan, let's go ahead and go to our solo stuff now, and
Yes.
I'm going to begin with Supergirl number 22. This is bizarre.
Bizarro or just bizarre?
No, it's bizarre. I don't know what I think. Well, I enjoyed this, but here's my problem. I'm a giant Death of Superman fan. Mm-hmm. And this reinvents Cyborg Superman, and we saw him right at the end of the last issue, and I went, wait a minute, what's that about? Basically, Supergirl, as I was talking about last time we were talking about this book, is last time on New Acquisitions talking about Supergirl. I was talking about how Supergirl was on this other planet that had these people that have this ability to create things based on memories. And they want to recreate Krypton from Supergirl's memories. Once again, kind of like Star Trek Voyager, every other episode, Supergirl's going to find some way to get her home back, because that's what she wants to do. And but I like that this book kind of pokes fun at that a little bit, too. This issue especially really does. It's got a great sense of humor about it. And Supergirl comes to this point toward the middle of this where she's like, God, I've got to realize that nice boys, she says this, that nice boys who want to recreate Krypton are up to no good. And this time it's Cyborg Superman shows up and claims that he doesn't know who he is, where he comes from, why he has an S on his chest, why he seems to be Kryptonian, but he doesn't like that he's partially cybernetic, and that all he needs is this is creepy, that all he needs is Supergirl's body to fill in the rest of his flesh parts.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, and he tries to just get her to agree to let the planet help her recreate Krypton. And of course she's like, well, it's not going to be the real Krypton, and she's smart enough to realize that it would just be this kind of like dream world, and everything would be organic and be kind of, feel kind of real, but her real parents are actually dead, and they can recreate them,
yeah.
But they're not real, they're just from her memory, and so she's never going to amount to anything in reality. Perceives it. So anyway, ultimately that doesn't end up working, so finally it's just Cyborg Superman saying, fine, let me tell you what I really want from you, and that's your body! And we can take your consciousness, and we can take it out of your body, and we can put you in this world where Krypton still exists, and everything that you ever remember is there, and you can live out the rest of your life like that. And she has this great moment where she's like, well, I was with you up to the point where you were completely insane. And I want to give you that one. Oh yeah, this is great. She's got this moment where she says, okay, two things. There's this moment where she says, I'm sorry, I like to quote Supergirl in this because I love her. She has this voice that's very all her own. Like, I love it when you get a character who you hear dialogue and you say, wow, that's so Kara, and she has this
It's fun to have a character with Superman's powers that's sarcastic.
He says, your body. He says, your body, I need your flesh to reconstitute my own. Then she gives him this look. Awesome. And she says, you want to say that again? I couldn't hear you through all the creepiness coming out of your mouth. And then,
awesome.
And then he starts monologuing, and he says, blah, 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 you'll have peace, and I will be perfection. And then she says, wow, I am speechless over your level of insanity. Here's the thing, I really enjoyed this, as you can tell. This is really fun.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting, like, maybe I'm, like, reading a little bit too much into it, but it sounds sort of like, a little bit like a grand sci-fi sort of take on, like, some sort of creepy dude objectifying a woman and being obsessed with her body and wanting to take possession of it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know if it's that far, because he's kind of just waiting for something to come along, and there she is. Like they're not really playing up the gender part of it, but I see where you're coming from.
It's like when there's this creepy dudes that, like, the first girl that comes along that's pretty, they get obsessed with them just because of the way they look, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but then at the same time, he kind of specifically wants a Kryptonian. So I don't know, but but I'm with you. I mean, there's some of that there because it's really creepy. But my problem with this so far, and we'll see how it continues, and if there's a really great explanation for it, is twofold. This is not Cyborg Superman. Cyborg Superman is Hank Henshaw, and this is some random guy. I don't know where he came from. He doesn't either, which is weird. At first, he starts acting like he's got amnesia, and I kind of thought that he was just making that up because he has an ulterior motive. Turns out that seems to be true. He seems to actually not really know where he's from. So maybe they'll play that in. But the thing about it is, it's New 52. I get that. I get that there's some reinventions of characters and some like really extreme reinventions where they look the same, but it's an entirely different backstory. The problem is they kept Green Lantern in a bubble. And in Green Lantern, Hank Henshaw is a Green Lantern villain. We have...
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
We have the Cyborg Superman who's no longer... He's wearing a Superman costume, but he's still got the face. He's still Cyborg, and that's what they call him. That's his name. Well, they call him Hank Henshaw now. But they don't even call... He doesn't even have a villain anymore. They just call him Hank Henshaw. But my point is, how can you have both? It seems like really easy. It seems, you know what I mean? Like it's a little contrived that you could have this random guy who looks just like that, but then also Hank Henshaw's still around. I don't get that. Whatever. Forgetting all of that, boy, this is a lot of fun, and also just wrong. And I mean, like, you're reading it and you're like, oh, this seems like kind of a typical sci-fi. What? That's weird, So that's always a fun kind of moment to have in a comic book. I am highly recommending this, even if the Cyborg Superman thing turns out to not make any kind of sense whatsoever. It's still really, really good reading.
Yeah, that sounds like right up there with Superman Unchained is probably one of the best books in the Superman line. Right now. That sounds really fun.
But, in my opinion, for my taste, it has been since the beginning. Supergirl has been a little hit and miss in places for me, but then I'll go back and I'll go, oh, that's where they were going with it? Like, a lot of the time it's just, it'll start a story arc and I'll go, I didn't really care for that, and then it'll finish the story arc and I'll go, oh, that's where they're going. Anyway, there's a great sense of continuity to it. There's a lot of... She's talking a lot still about hell and, the guy who tried to recreate or go back to Krypton and all that.
Right.
And there's a nice sense of continuity to it and everything. Anyway, yeah, I'm loving that. It's quite good.
That sounds fantastic. I did read the first arc of Supergirl in digital, and I did really enjoy it. I'm with you. So maybe that's something along with Green Arrow, that I'd like to check out eventually.
Absolutely, yeah.
And hits trade in its entirety. But anyway, the first solo book I have is Thunderbolts number 13.
No, you said it wrong. It's Thunderbolts!
Thunderbolts! And we have the namesake right there on the cover.
Oh, man!
General Thunderbolt Ross. So this is all about him and Flash Thompson and this conversation that they have about a character that I didn't even know was on this team. Her name is Mercy. And this sort of goes into her backstory and talks about how she came to be on the team because she's sort of an enigma and she seems really powerful and really scary. And Flash Thompson, being the sort of grounded one of the group, he goes to Thunderbolt Ross and he says, look, I'm not going to work with people that are this morally ambiguous because supposedly in the arc that Daniel Way had written, she had killed a lot of people in front of Flash and he didn't really know why, and that upset him quite a bit, obviously. This was really fascinating. This starts out as General Ross sort of stumbling upon this character who is a really obscure Hulk villain that the Hulk had fought in one issue when she was taken out. And basically what she is this entity, and we don't really know what exactly she is yet, but she's this entity that can sense people that have a death wish and will grant those people. And that's how she stays alive. She feeds on the energy of these people when she kills them. It's sort of this parasitic relationship that she has where she needs to kill people to survive. And it's interesting to throw her into this group of people because basically all of them have a death wish. And she views that as a merciful act. So Thunderbolt Ross stumbles across her, and it's sort of like that classic militarism theme where you open a box and you can't close it, and you have to find the least terrible thing to do with it to make the best out of a really bad situation, and we see Thunderbolt Ross dealing with all that sort of stuff. Mercy, when he stumbles upon her again later on, is posing as the Indian god of death, and she has like this temple dedicated to her, and she has lines of all these people with death wishes, and they all want to die. And Thunderbolt Ross has this conversation with her where he's like, "Look, someone can have a bad day and want to die, but once they get over that, they could find something else to live for again." People go through different stages in their life and that sort of thing. So it was really interesting talking about what it means to want to live and that sort of thing. It was really interesting thematic stuff going on. He has a great voice for all these characters, especially Flash. I love the way he wrote Flash, and that was probably the most important thing for me in picking up this book. So I was really, really impressed with this, even more so than the last issue. Really, really great stuff. After these two great issues, I think I'm going to continue to read this book for the duration this writer's on it. I'm really, really liking this. It's good stuff. So if you guys at all like Hulk stuff, this is pulling from 60s, 70s Hulk continuity and doing really, really interesting things with it. So awesome stuff.
Yeah, when you just started that, the previous issue, and it just immediately sounded great, and I was like, wow, I can't believe there's this book that's been out there that, we had no idea how good that was.
Right, I mean, Daniel Way was on it before, and it's pulling from some of the things that he did, obviously, with that Mercy character, because she was introduced in there, that whole Frank and Elektra relationship was set up there, but he's doing a good job making it accessible and giving you windows into what makes all the characters tick, so I'm really, really enjoying that about it.
I'm still really impressed with just the very notion of Frank Castle and Elektra. I just really like that.
It's so cool, isn't it? I can't wait to see that.
I'm going to go on now, Dan, to Batgirl number 22. This, of course, Gail Simone with art by Fernando Pizarro. And this continues to be quite good. This is basically, at the end of last issue, Barbara gets back from her crazy ordeal and forgets that she was supposed to go on a date, and meets this guy at the door, and she's all messed up because she just got in a big fight. So here he knocks on the door, and she comes up, and she's like, for you never saw me like this, and he's like, okay, and then she runs off and changes, and they go out on a date, and Barbara is trying out dating an ex-car thief. This guy used to be a car thief, but it's one of those situations where he did it one time, he had no prior record, and he's been doing a lot of community service afterwards, so she's not holding it against him, and he seems like a really stand-up guy. He's trying too hard to impress her, so he says, we're going to go to the opera, and he's clearly the kind of guy who's not going to go to an opera. She's dressed for it, but he's wearing a hoodie. And so then they get broadsided in an alley in that kind of classic scenario where the superhero is out on a date and has to fight off a bunch of guys with knives with her date. Except in this situation, he's actually able to hold his own. He just wails on these guys, and then she has this great narration box where she's like, wow, I thought I was gonna have to protect this guy, and then it's kind of like the Watchmen scenario with less death, where their date is they take out a bunch of these guys in an alley, and then it brings them closer together, and it's kind of neat the way it is. And of course, what's cool about Barbara Gordon is that she is able to make this guy buy that she's got those kind of mad skills because she's the daughter of the police commissioner, so she can get away with that. And Gail Simone is always really smart and believable with those sorts of ideas. That's not contrived. That you might buy that, And so anyway, it's that romance is fun. And then she has this conversation with her dad where she decides she's going to... I hope I'm not giving away too much. Skip ahead if you don't want to know anymore, but I don't know what else to say except talk about this part. She has this conversation with Jim Gordon where she basically decides that, not that she tells him this, but in the narration during the scene, you can tell where this is going. She's gonna quit being Batgirl because of basically everything that happened with her brother, and she's worried about her dad losing another child. And then there was all that business from a couple issues ago of feeling like she's not worthy of the Batsuit after her brother was killed. He's not actually dead, but I don't think at this point she knows that. I think. Anyway, it's confusing.
I like that, though.
Between a couple of
Gordon Jr. is a fascinating character. I would hate to lose him.
It's kind of between a couple of books, but anyway, basically the idea is he's really worried about what might happen to her, and then without saying too much, Jim Gordon has this conversation with Batman at the end where he wants Batman to go find Batgirl. But that's Barbara Gordon, and she's not going to be Batgirl anymore. So it's a really interesting setup.
Do you think he knows?
Given what he does in that scene, I do think he knows, but I'm not going to give that away. It's something I've never seen before in a Batman comic. Anyway, this was quite good, and this continues to be great stuff. There's not a whole lot to say about it, really. It's just kind of a fun, interesting romance in a superhero kind of way. I always like it when you get a character that a superhero can date that can kind of match them physically, so that it's not the traditional I have to pretend like I'm weaker than I am or whatever, and I'm going to put you in danger, that sort of business. It kind of turns that on its head a little bit, and so anyway, it's kind of the Batman Catwoman scenario where Batman's going to date somebody that can physically match him.
Yeah, that was one of the things back when Frank Miller was working in the 70s and 80s that he tried to do with Elektra and the Catwoman and Batman relationship. He always talks about why wouldn't Superman be running around with Wonder Woman instead of Lois Lane?
Exactly.
And that's something that's going on in DC right now.
Now it's happening. Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead, Dan.
My last book is Darth Vader and the Ninth Assassin, #4. And this continues our foray into a second prophecy that Darth Vader has to supposedly has to fulfill.
That's so stupid! Is it still stupid?
Well, see, they're trying... There's an attempt here to do something sort of interesting with it, and what it is basically there's this cult of the Snake, which are the people that had tried to assassinate the Emperor. We learned that the cult that he stumbles upon in this temple that has this prophecy about Darth Vader is the one that had been trying to assassinate the Emperor all along. So Vader walks into the den of these guys, and they're all like bowing before him and worshiping him because there's these like cave paintings they'd had that predate like everything else on the planet of Darth Vader coming and bringing chaos to the galaxy, which is basically the complete opposite of what Vader will fulfill his prophecy later on and bring balance to the Force, and the complete opposite of his goals as a instrument of the Emperor to bring was the whole thing of why the Empire was started, to eliminate the corruption and bring order to the people that they were seeking. So we have Vader at a crossroads there, where he's trying to decide, well, I could be worshipped like a god and have these people be my servants, and I could, rule the galaxy the way that the Emperor sort of does, but just by exerting my power however I want to. I don't really have to be responsible about it or think about it, and that's one of the things that Vader gets accused of by his superiors all the time, is he's just sort of a reckless warrior that, force chokes people whenever he feels like it. So it's an interesting thing for his character to be presented with something like that. That being said, it's done in such a way where, like, that Vader's not going to go with this, obviously, because it's a story in between the movies. So he's not going to get to a place where this actually happens. So that's in the back of your mind the whole time. Maybe that's an unfair criticism of it, but I don't know. That's just sort of what I was thinking. All of that thematic stuff got interesting, and it took 4 issues to get there. That's my only real problem with it, is that we're getting all the interesting ideas that this book is going with in issue 4, and they don't really seem to be connected at all with the premise of the book, which is some assassins trying to go after Darth Vader. It's called Darth Vader and the Ninth Assassin, and the assassin hasn't shown up for like two, 3 issues now. I don't know if that's going to be connected at all to this plot with the cult, which is a little bit more interesting than that. But I'm not really sure.
That sounds incredibly meandery.
Yeah, that's exactly the word I would use to describe it. But this issue was actually my favorite of the series so far, given that it has some interesting ideas, at least, to talk about with the character. So I'd recommend this one. This one was fun.
That is always the danger with prequel stuff, isn't it? I mean, like, I think it is a fair criticism to say, well, we already know where he's going to go, because you can't build up any kind of suspense.
Right, exactly.
For that premise. Prequels can work, but boy, it's tough.
It is. Especially with a character that had a botched prequel already.
I agree with you.
Yeah, this is sort of a lukewarm recommendation for me. I'm hoping that they can stick some sort of a landing and make sense of all this and make me care. And I think it's worth mentioning, too, there was a little preview of that the Star Wars thing that they're doing, and the art looks beautiful.
Oh, great.
I might make you check it out, but I don't know. Still.
Then my last book is the X-Files Season 10, number 2. This is by Joe Harris with Chris Carter, story written by Joe Harris. Of course, Chris Carter, creator of X-Files. It's always hard to tell exactly how much the creator actually does on something like this.
Right. Isn't that the sort of billing that Whedon got on a lot of the Buffy season stuff that he didn't write himself?
Yeah, well, some of that he actually wrote, but...
Yeah, but I think there was a point where he... I mean, I didn't read it, but I had heard that there were other people...
But I imagine there's some of that going on with Eastman.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. He just writes the story and Walt scripts everything.
But anyway, so I like the second issue a lot more than the first, and I'm definitely going to keep on this. Also, the art is starting to grow on me. This is really minimalistic, really sketchy, but I think that it fits the tone of the show pretty well. Because, the show was, really gritty looking thing, and there would be a lot of points where, there was a lot of darkness, and you couldn't really tell what was going on, but then it actually served the story, and it built suspense, and so, it fits well for this material. But I gotta say, as I said last time, I haven't seen all of, the last 2 seasons of this, and it's been a long time since I've seen the finale. I've been watching X-Files lately, and I'm through, the middle of Season 7 right now, but I don't know exactly what's going on in this, which is also somewhat par for the course for X-Files, because, sometimes that show was a little bit confusing, But anyway, so we have Doggett in this all of a sudden, which I was sort of surprised they put in. And I remember Agent Doggett was the guy who replaced Mulder for a while, and then Mulder would occasionally come back in. And so he's in this now, but then he disappears at the beginning of this. And so this is further proof that these weird, crazy, creepy guys with the hoods are after a lot of people that have been involved with the X-Files, and we don't know exactly what they're doing yet, except that they kidnapped Dana Scully, and they want her for some reason that seems to have something to do with her daughter, and then toward the end of this we get a sense that there is indeed major alien involvement. I don't want to go any farther than that to give anything away on this, but it's very much tied into the major mythology of the show, not just aliens coming down, but all of the stuff to do with genetic engineering and conspiracy. And I will say this, because I don't think that this will be a huge, giant giveaway to anybody. There is, you do get the sense that at the end of this, the Smoking Man will be back pretty soon. Surely nobody's going to mind that if I say, hey, guess what, Smoking Man's coming back. It's X-Files. Anyway, the Lone Gunmen play a big part in this, and they come back. They are... I didn't realize this. They've pretended to be dead this whole time, and they're having a lot of fun still being conspiracy theorist nuts, but also being part of a conspiracy of their own, and that's kind of fun for them. We get some fun, creepy graveyard stuff. All of the ambiance is really great in this book, and again, I'm not going to talk too much about the plot. Especially until I get a better sense of exactly what's going on, which again I would feel better about if I knew the end of that show. But I'm enjoying this. I'm intrigued, and I'm going to keep going with it. I think this has a chance at being really, really good as it goes along. So anyway, definitely recommending X-Files Season 10.
So would you say, for someone that's never watched X-Files before, Is it accessible?
Not by any stretch of the imagination.
Okay.
No, it is very much one of these season things. It's season 10. It wants you to know the mythology, and it's not like X-Files. I want to believe the movie, which was, if you've never seen X-Files before, this is going to be like a standalone episode of the series that stays away from the mythology. This is rooted entirely in the mythology. So if you don't know it, and again, I almost feel like, I've even been watching X-Files recently. I almost feel like I need to go back to the very beginning and watch all the way through again, just to really familiarize myself, because like characters will pop up and I'm not sure if they're new or if they were in the show, because I just don't know it that well. This is for the diehards. Definitely.
It sounds very rewarding if you're a fan of the show, though.
Yeah, it is. You know, especially since we haven't had anything for so long. And one thing that I'm curious about, that I'm having a hard time getting a sense of, is when exactly this takes place, because there's evidence here, and it kind of comes right out. I think it comes right out and says this, but I'm hesitant. There's a mention of like something that happened toward the end of the series that I think is mentioned here to have been 10 or 12 years ago. I think this is supposed to be present day. I think it's like Mulder and Scully off the X-Files for like a decade, and then it comes back. But I may be wrong about that. But anyway, that's the sense I'm getting from it, is that it's actually not 99 or 2000, but in fact present day.
That's cool.
But anyway, so Dan, it's time now to go to Book of the Week, and why don't you choose first?
There was a lot of great stuff this week. As we talked, there was things that we, analyzed the crap out of. We could just talk about for 10 minutes. But if I were to choose one book that made me the happiest, I was smiling from ear to ear while reading it, tickled me in the right ways as a fan, I gotta go with Ultimate Spider-Man.
Oh, I knew you were gonna pick that. That was mine.
This, just as a Spider-Man fan, this was one of the most pleasing comic books I've read in a long time, and it feels good to have a Spider-Man comic that's this good. Because we haven't had one in a while that's, just called Spider-Man that's been really, really good. Not that this hasn't been good all the way through, but I think it lost its way a little bit when it had to tie into that whole America thing that they were doing in the Ultimates book. And now that it's back to basics, I'm really, really loving this book. It's so good.
Well, that makes me have to resort to a different book, and I'm between a couple. There's a part of me that wants to just pick Batman 66 just on the principle of the thing, but I just did a big review on that. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to pick Thanos Rising again. I know I picked this before, but yeah.
Fair enough, though.
He just keeps hitting me in the right places on that book.
If it wasn't Ultimate Spider-Man, it would have been Thor for me or Thanos.
Yeah, well, I think those books are equally on equal footing. But I think everything Aaron's writing right. I mean, you're saying really great things about Wolverine and the X-Men too. I mean, I think everything he's writing right now is kind of on par.
Oh yeah, Wolverine and X-Men's a completely different thing than those two things. And Thor and Thanos, they're not all that similar. It's just
they have more
a little bit lighthearted.
They have more in common than either of them does with Wolverine and the X-Men.
Exactly. But yeah, he's just firing on all cylinders right now. I can't say enough good things about the guy. He's like Bendis, where I can read everything that he's doing, at least Marvel-wise, and not feel like I'm getting too much of the same writer, the same voice. He's very flexible in that way.
Well, then next week we are gonna finally have, among other things, Guardians of the Galaxy #5 with Angela, and I'm really excited to finally read that and see what's done with her. So everybody look forward to that. And Dan, thanks as always for being with me, man.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having me. This was a great week. I enjoyed talking about pretty much all these books.
This was one of, if not our longest show, but we had a ton of books. Anyway, sorry for the length, but hope you enjoyed it. And I also forgot to mention at the beginning of the show, thanks as always to Elite Comics out here in Kansas City, in Overland Park, Kansas, for helping us out with the show. And if you're ever in the Kansas City area, be sure and check them out. If you want to send anything for us to review on the Comic Book Vault, you can always send that to our P.O. Box, and that's Geekvolution, P.L. Box 14183, Lenexa, Kansas 66285. And thanks again for watching. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Dan.
And happy reading.